Alrighty. So our speaker for this evening is Gabe, who's also one of our co-organizers, and he is going to tell us a little bit about a project that he has developed called Tabs Toronto. Over to you, Gabe.
Thanks, Sam. So this is my first Civic Tech Toronto Hacknight presentation. I've scheduled presenters for a lot of these, but this is my first time being a presenter myself. Amazing news, I have no slides. Tonight, I'm just gonna demo a real live Civic Tech project. And I'll get to that in a few minutes, but first I need to sort of set it up. One of the things that I love about Civic Tech is that it's folks using their skills or building new skills in the hopes of helping make things better. Along the way, we learn a lot, including about civics, government, change, and persuasion, and lots of other stuff. Most of what I know about government, I actually learned through Civic Tech, including that government is not one thing. There are at least 3 levels of government, and that the levels don't actually get along very well. 2, that a lot of the services that we use day to day as residents, like the government services that we use, are delivered by the City of Toronto, for those of us in Toronto. And that kind of makes sense. Also that the City of Toronto has a bigger budget than some provinces, which I guess that makes sense too. And then you can, I didn't know this at first, but you can actually go to City Hall and get 5 minutes to speak to a bunch of city councilors, including the mayor. How cool is that? They don't make it easy, but it's doable. It's called deputing, and there are chances to do it most days of the week. It's one of the ways that we can be active in our democracy between elections. And though they don't make it that easy, they really want you to. The folks that we elect to city council are reasonable, but they and their staff typically want input to know what they should do. That's especially the case for technology related stuff. And Bianca has a great blog post about this, which I will share at the end. So it's not random. You do need to request to speak in advance on a specific agenda item at a specific meeting in order to have that chance to speak to councilors. But there are committee meetings all the time, and you can find the schedule and agendas on the city website. So the city has a pretty cool system that they built for managing committee meetings and agenda items. It's called TIMIS. I don't remember what it stands for. It was cutting edge when it was built. It hasn't aged that well. If you look at the HTML source, it's very cringy, but it still works reasonably well. And it's honestly a lot better than what most cities use. So if you go into this, you can take a look at the schedule of meetings. Today the Preservation Board met, and the Audit and Risk Management Committee of Toronto Parking Authority. Over the next 2 days, there's a council meeting. So, and you can see what's on the agenda for each of these things. It's like a little bit boring and a little bit exciting at the same time. If you're someone who cares about, and I guess, and the other thing I'll point out is that you can search. So you can punch in a search for whatever, and it'll show you agenda items related to that thing. So if you're someone who cares about like housing or public transit or whatever, you may want to know when a committee is going to talk about that. So you through the agenda or through the search, you find the item that you want to speak to. There's this item coming up here. This is like quite random. This is tomorrow. This is going to be on the council. This is council tomorrow. Council doesn't count. Let me try another one. Anyway, you can find there's well, the agenda items are available through TIMIS. And for upcoming committee meetings, not council meetings, there on that page there's a button that says request to speak, and that's the button you need to click in order to get your 5 minutes in front of that committee. Doesn't work for city council. Works for everything else. I think the sort of the question then quickly becomes, if you're interested in public transit or whatever the case may be, how do you know to check TIMIS for that agenda item? Meeting agendas are posted about 7 days ahead of time, and no one has enough spare time that they should be spending that time checking TIMIS a couple of times a week, just in case there's an agenda item coming up that relates to your interests. So this isn't a new problem, and I'm not the first person to try to solve it. Almost 10 years ago, a group of folks got together at a civic hackathon called Random Hacks of Kindness and built what they called Tabs on Toronto, which originally stood for Transparent and Accessible Bulletin System. It was delightfully simple. You type in a search term, you type in your email address, and then you wait. Each night, it will check to see if there are any new agenda items that relate to the search terms. And then if there is, it'll just send you an email with links to those new items. So I loved their tool. I used it to learn when committees were going to be talking about open data and free Wi-Fi. And I deputed a few times as a result. Along the way, I learned a lot about how City Council works. A couple of years ago, Tabs Toronto went offline. It's sad, but not unexpected. Can volunteers really be expected to pay for web hosting and domains for a decade? It's kind of a wonder that it still worked at all after all those years. So last winter, I was between jobs and I got an email out of the blue from someone who remembered me from coming to some of these Hacknights and asked me if I knew what happened to Tabs Toronto. So we set up a call and she explained that part of her job at the environmental nonprofit where she worked was to see if there were any upcoming items at City Council that were relevant to them. If there was a climate issue that was going to be discussed, it would be embarrassing for them to find out about it by reading the newspaper. It was their job to know in advance so that they could do their advocacy work to try to influence the decisions that council makes. So part of her job was to go and check TIMIS every day, type in the same bunch of search terms to see if anything relevant came up. She helped out a few other nonprofits by typing in their search terms too and letting them know if anything came up. She said that she felt uncomfortable going on vacation because she was worried that stuff would get missed. That seemed bananas to me, and so I told her that I would rebuild Tabs Toronto so that she could go on vacation and not have to worry about it. So I reached out to the folks who were involved in the original version of Tabs. They had all moved on, but they consented to let me use the name of their project in honor of the original that they had built. And they told me not to bother looking at their code, that there are way easier, more modern ways of building it now. So for a few months last winter and spring, I ran a breakout at Civic Tech Toronto Hacknights to rebuild Tabs Toronto. Sometimes folks came and we talked about the project and I got some good advice. Sometimes no one came and I just plugged away and built it. So I launched it last winter or spring maybe, and I told a few folks about it. And that's basically the story. This is what it looks like now. This is Tabs Toronto. It's I hope you didn't have your hopes up. This is about as simple as a technical project can possibly be. But what I'm proud of is that I've barely touched it since then, and it still works. I get an email from it every week or two. Some of my friends use it and have told me that they've used it to help them find important stuff that they wouldn't have heard about otherwise. And that they've, in some cases, sometimes they've gone to depute at City Council because of Tabs. So without trying to measure the scale of the impact that this tool has had, I feel confident saying, based on that Tabs Toronto is good for democracy. People deputed who would not have otherwise. To me, that's a win. So let me show you. Let me show you this tool. It is it's a website that has a Google form on it. That's it. There's like some other stuff below, but this is the gist of it. It is a Google form. It's not that pretty, but what you might do here is punch in a search term. You might want to know something about raccoons. Might be very interested in raccoons. You can punch in your email address, and that's it. It sends an email that that you have to click to confirm your subscription to make sure that you punched in your own email address. And then if and when there's an item that comes up that matches your search, you get an email that looks like this. Also not very pretty, but in this case, I have a search. I have an active search for customer experience. Recently, it returned a result about Toronto Parking Authority, an item that was in that meeting that happened today. And if I had wanted to, I could have clicked on this and gone to and potentially gone to Depute or sent an email, or at least know that this is being discussed. The link here will take you to the item itself, where at some point in here it'll it refers to customer experience. For those who want to know how it works, the Google form has some action script in it, which sends the confirmation email, and then puts the data into a MySQL database. I wrote a Python script using a web scraping library called Scrapey, which runs every night to check for new agenda items. That runs on a service called Scrapey Cloud, which I pay $9 a month US for. And the emails that it sent, these notification emails that it sends them through SendGrid, and I'm still well within the free tier for that. So I'm not saying that everyone needs to go down to City Hall and depute about stuff, but I do believe that folks who understand civic tech and design have some great ideas that are worth sharing with counselors. And so if you do find opportunities to items that are interesting to you that may or may not be related to tech and design, but I think you should really consider that it may be worthwhile to share that with counselors. When you see council sort of moving in a direction, especially on tech issues, for example, I'm making an assumption here that there are folks who might be interested in that here. But if you see council sort of moving in a direction on something that seems unadvisable, we did, for example, with Pay It, or something that seems quite strong, like very recently with ConnectTO, it's valuable to participate. That the folks that you other folks in the civic tech community, the broader tech community, have really important perspectives to share on this, and should be doing that through this channel at City Hall. Sometimes deputants influence the decision that council makes, and at the very least, they remind councillors that people care about what's being discussed and that we're watching. Bianca wrote a great blog post which makes this argument in a more complete and convincing way. It's called "Speaking at Your City Hall About Technology Policy: Some Possible Whys." I encourage you to check it out if you're interested. So that's it. That's my talk. I'm up for questions if you've got them. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Big round of applause for Gabe. And if anyone has any questions, please put a Q or any other letter in the chat, and I'll go through and call on you in order. Any burning questions? Ushnish, yeah.
Hey, Gabe. So in terms of, customizing the emails just based on a selection list on a keyword, the city has been relatively reluctant to do that. I've been asking them to do that for their open data website for a long time, saying, hey, there's people interested in these data sets, just provide an email saying these are the updates based on these keywords, and they just won't do it. What's the reluctance? But they'll send out a generic email every time there's a council meeting, right? You can sign up for that. So what's the reluctance for a basic customization that's coming from the city?
So I don't know what the official answer to that is, or if there isn't. There probably isn't an official answer. My guess is that would require some additional custom work on top of TIMIS, which is itself a custom system. And so they're probably very careful about when and how they do that kind of customization. I guess my assumption is that like I don't know. I'm really just making this up, but I could imagine that as much as it would make sense for this to be a service that the city offers, I could also see how from a like risk perspective, they may not want to. That like, you know, what happens if the email doesn't go out? Right? Then like if there's an email that's supposed to get sent and whatever, it gets stuck in some kind of, you know, internet black hole or something, then that's the kind of problem that the city doesn't want to have to deal with. So that said, I mean, you know, there are I think there are lots of counter arguments to that as well, but I don't know. I don't know why the city doesn't offer it. I wish they did, but in the meantime, there's this.
Awesome, Mita.
So first of all, thank you for the presentation and thank you for tabs. My question is, in this work, did you ever have to wrestle with PDFs? Because I would love to do something similar for my own city, but they are deeply invested into PDFs.
Yeah, thanks. That's such a good question. So, I mean, I'd say that I'm not taking feature requests, but if I was, I would submit that feature request. The if you spend a little time on Timis, you'll find that like there's what the Timis search, which is what tabs piggybacks on, what the scope of what it searches is the HTML page, but all of the really juicy items have lots of PDF attachments. Thanks, Luke. The Timis search and therefore tabs don't index those PDFs. And that's a bummer because we would find a lot more stuff if we did. And it's conceivable that you could build a version of tabs that does download every single PDF attachment to every single item and indexes those and OCRs it if it's not already indexed. But that's not the scale of the tool that I built. But that would be a cool thing to add. I know that I haven't looked extensively at what the equivalent of this is in other cities, but my impression based on a quick scan is that they're very PDF reliant. That like, whereas Timis is like 1990s HTML, it's at least it's HTML and parsable, whereas a lot of other systems just use like a single PDF for the entire agenda for a committee meeting, and that would be a real headache.
It used to be that not that long ago, our city council would take the document and then they would scan it, and they would then but they would physically scan it, so you couldn't even do the OCR. We actually even have structured headings. So, but I think that's one of the blessings of that system is that it is text-based. Again, thanks.
Awesome. And John?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a props for making it so simple. It's easy to use. It was by your account relatively straightforward to code, and it does what you need it to do. And frankly, you have dealt with feature creep, which is a huge problem in tax. So I salute you, sir.
Thank you. In those I appreciate that, John. When we were doing breakouts at Civic Tech Toronto Hacknights, when I was doing the work on this, there were a lot of such awesome suggestions for additional features, and I felt a bit guilty kind of shooting them all down. But I think that I really took a lot of inspiration from this is like a sort of, it has one feature and that's the exact same feature that the old version of tabs had, and so it's like feature parity with the old tabs, and I just really appreciated that tool for exactly what you say, for its simplicity. And so And so I thought that. I think the other thing was like, this, I set low expectations in that, like, I kind of, if the only person in the world who gets value from this tool is me, then that's how much energy I decided to put into it. And so I feel like, if other people appreciate it, that's bonus. But I don't need, I don't need to go further necessarily. I would like to have the chance to do that, but yeah, it's a one trick pony, and I'm fine with that for now. Thanks, John.
I'm going to squeeze in a related question before you, Luke. Sorry. I'm curious what some of those features were that people suggested, especially ones that you felt like, oh, there's a really like good use case for this, and we're not going to include it.
I don't remember off the top. But I do have a Google Doc that we started then, where I've stored all of those. I mean, the ones that come most immediately to mind for me, the ones that I guess like I have a bias towards, are attempting to parse PDFs. That would be a giant project, but that would deliver a lot of additional value on top of what it does right now. I think it would go beyond what the city's website provides, which would be pretty cool. And then with that problem solved, then like, why stop at Toronto? Then like start expanding to other cities, regionally or otherwise. There are lots of civic issues don't end at the border of the city of Toronto. And so being able to do a search for these, for like climate related stuff on a regional level would be pretty swell, for example.
Cool. Luke.
Thanks. I just wanted to, like, for those folks who mentioned that, like, maybe their local governments are, kind of scanning un-OCRable PDFs. I know that was an old example, but you might have grounds to confront them with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And it like forced them to do something better. And the only reason they've been getting away with doing it is that no one's noticed and done that. So if you live somewhere where they're releasing future council agenda items and stuff like that, see if you could take them to court. It works. Anyway, that's not my question. My question is just a bit silly. I'm curious, Gabe, in addition to customer experience and raccoons, I'm curious what other searches you have on for yourself.
I mean, I've got to search for open data. I've got to search for technology. That's all that's coming to me right now. I have like the ability to see what other people's searches are for. There are certainly folks who are using it for searching like kind of affordable housing stuff, as well as like development related stuff. That's all that comes to mind right now. I can tell you.
I just made one for my like kind of main street in my neighborhood, which I think is actually probably one that we all could do, right? Like if there's like if you live on Bloor Street, or whatever, like you can put that down and figure out what they're doing in terms of zoning and bike lanes or whatever in your neighborhood is kind of cool.
Thank you, Luke. That reminds me of another really hot feature, like possible future feature request, which is a kind of like a geographic search to be able to sort of say like, to be able to have it like search for addresses, geocode those addresses, and then if they fall within a search range from a spot that you specify, then it would count those. That'd be enormously, well, it would be complicated, and I wouldn't know how to build that, but there are people who do. That would be pretty swell. If anyone's interested, there are, well, as of last week, we had 37 users. So not bad, considering that it has been promoted in like one email that I sent to about a dozen people. 2 of those people tweeted about it. And then I talked about it a few times at Civic Tech. I've talked about it in breakout rooms at Civic Tech Toronto. So maybe it sounds like I have more users now. So welcome all. I hope you enjoy it. I would love your feedback. And on the Q&A section on the website, there is buried in there a user survey, and so I would love your feedback through that if you if you are so inclined. If there's interest in breakout, I would love to chat with folks who might have ideas about like what the appropriate way would be to promote this. This is an incredibly niche tool. And like, I don't actually know how to get the word out about it. I'm also not like desperately motivated to have lots of people using this thing, but if it exists, and if it would be of value to folks who could, for example, go on vacation without worrying about things, I would really love for them to know about it. So any suggestions on that? Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions? Any at all? I have one, which I'm just going to say as host. I'm curious, like, because you mentioned, you have 37 users and you like have only hit this like $10 tier on one tool that you use and you haven't hit this other tier. Have you modeled out the finances for a certain number of searches or certain number of users? At what point this would be like unsustainable for you?
No, I mean, I think the pricing models for SaaS tools scale really well. So, I mean, I don't know, but I'm not super worried about it. I mean, I guess one person could put in a bunch of like very high, like like searches for very popular terms or very frequently occurring terms. Like someone could put in a search for like and or something, whatever, or like Toronto or something. And then that would generate a lot of
We've lost Gabe.
Anytime soon. I think it would need to be like, it would have to be like essentially like a DOS of some sort to like, or like a distributed attack of some sort to try to get me to spend more than $30 a month on this, I think, which, you know, that doesn't seem very risky to me.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions about the tool, about Timis, about city issues, about deputing? Lots of ground.
I guess I'd say that, like, just to build on the last one, that, like, you know, the decision to build it and the decision about how to build it and like what tools to use to build it, the factors that were in my mind were both like, you know, what do I have the like technical skills to produce, to like, you know, make work, but also and like what can I afford, and then finally, like, what is going to require the least amount of maintenance, like what can I just sort of like do once and like rarely have to put any. I've put probably about like 6 hours of maintenance into it, maybe since it launched. Like it broke once, and took me a while to figure out why, but like that's because if it was to require a lot of maintenance, then that's the moment when I would maybe pull the plug on it, which I would feel really guilty about if there are folks, especially folks who I know, who appreciate it. So.
My question, Gabe, does it just do agenda items or does it do minutes of meeting after?
Good question. It only does agenda items. So sometimes there can be changes made to an item after, like, sort of after the meeting or whatever. It doesn't pick any of that stuff up. So it's like not as precise or complete as it could conceivably be. But I think, I think the range of typically, I don't think that the subject matter of the item will change that much, but there may be times when it does. So in those cases, those would be ones that we miss.
Okay.
And John, go ahead.
I appreciate the concerns with PDFs about accessibility, and that really is important. If you're posting PDFs that are set up so they can't be OCR'd, then you're basically making scraping the documents for readers quite impossible, and I think that's definitely bad. But one thing I would like to say is that it might be better to have from the point of view of purely of a search. I would rather lobby city councils to provide appropriate metadata rather than trying to scrape down the whole document, because I notice, for instance, in Google searches are plagued with a huge number of not terribly relevant results in the end. And I think if I was getting alerted to every time the word bicycle is mentioned in a city council agenda item, I might be tempted to miss the ones that actually are of significant interest to me. So if I was advising you, I would say basically better metadata is a very good way to go here from the point of view of searching. And you know, I won't press you for more features, because I've just told you that creeping featureitis is a bad idea. But with tools of this sort, it is generally desirable, where all things being equal, I think, to have the most specific searches possible, so that people can get only the information that is of interest, that is directly concerning them. So if an email does land, then you're actually looking at something you probably might want to take the time to at least consider deputing or advocating that someone else depute.
I appreciate that, John. One of my deputations to City Council was to make the content of the TIMIS database open source. Can't imagine why they wouldn't want to do that, but they haven't yet. Another one of those features, I suppose, that they haven't built out because it's custom. But the TIMIS search does offer some advanced search features for those that there may be that I haven't incorporated the fancy stuff there, but I guess that's another possibility, is to sort of give people the ability to, if they've got a very tightly refined TIMIS search that they do, make it possible for them to carry that over into tabs.
I have I just had a related question to that. Do we know whether TIMIS is going to be updated anytime soon? And can we do a search on TIMIS to find out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember hearing years ago about rumors of a TIMIS 2. And I don't, as far as I could tell, I'm still looking at TIMIS 1. So I'm not really sure what happened, but I haven't. There was a time when I heard stuff about that, but that was definitely years ago. So I don't know. And I did reach out to the folks of the city who I think are behind TIMIS when I started this work, to kind of give them a heads up and ask them some tech questions, and I never heard back. So they probably know about it, but haven't engaged.
Awesome. So we're at 10 to 8. So I'm going to close out the Q&A. Thanks so much, Gabe, for all these answers. And if anyone still is interested in how to promote this or have any more questions, Gabe, it sounds like you'll be around in a breakout room after. So Luke, you can go ahead and stop the recording.